at 3:02. Roll call, please.
Director Hertz,
Here.
Director Hoffman, Director Hoffman,
I think you're both trying to unmute
at the same time. Director Hoffman.
Let's look.
Here.
There we go.
Great, thank you. And Director Riley.
Here.
All present.
All present. Comments from the public. The public may comment on any item within the district jurisdiction. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes in length. Public comment is now open.
I see we have one member of the public present. If you'd like to comment, please press *9 on your phone or use the raised hand icon. I see no raised hands. Chair.
All right, public comment is now closed. Okay, action item. Consider adoption of the June 4th, 2020 committee meeting.
I move approval. I will second that.
We have a motion by Director Rowley and a second by Director Hoffman. Roll call vote, please.
Director
Yes.
and Director Riley
Aye.
and Director Edwards.
Aye,
Motion approved 3-0.
thank you. General Manager, now we're in discussion items.
Correct. This item, we've prepared a quick PowerPoint or PDF that Arlene will put on the screen. The staff note was fairly thorough, written by Stephanie Locke and backed up by myself. Also in there as exhibits were the original responses of the jurisdictions. We did meet with the Technical Advisory Committee earlier today and went through virtually the same presentation. I can report that it was relatively well received. No individual jurisdictions seem to have any problem with it. We've encouraged them to go back. Stephanie will send them a reminder in 10 days, and we will see if upon further deliberation or digesting of the information, if any of the jurisdictions have a significant conflict with it. The member of the public who's on right now in this meeting was also on that meeting. That meeting was also attended by Steve Westhoff of the State Water Resources Control Board, as well as a very involved woman from the city of Pacific Grove, among others who were just observing. So this presentation will summarize the various tables that were included in the staff note. And if we can go to the first one, Arlene.
Dave, can I just ask you a quick question? Was the meeting you're talking about, the technical, was that earlier today?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's the one that we tried to schedule for the end of June, but it ended up 2 days into July.
Thank you.
Let's see. Here we go.
There we go. And maybe always try to just go up a little bit on the screen, Arlene, so we get the bottom in. Yeah. So these were the initial responses. The important to note is Delray Oaks, who was on the call today, were just too inundated to get a response in, and the unincorporated county did not reply. And then what we call some underrepresented entities, the Naval Postgraduate School and the Presidio of Monterey and the school districts, we did not have time to reach out directly to them. So this is what the initial responses look like, as well as the percentages if each entity were to receive what was requested. Next slide.
Dave, can I cut in, or do you want to finish first?
Yeah, no, go ahead. That's good.
Okay. Those entities did not have a chance to apply, like Delray Oaks. you know, and the Naval Postgraduate School and whoever, the school district, is it too late to try? I heard the presentation this morning.
Right.
Too late to let them give a number, or that 75 acres, are we going to break it down across the board for everybody?
Yeah, I think what we're going to do, because we're giving the jurisdictions a little additional time, is, well, Delray Oaks and the county did have time. They were in the initial review. I think what Stephanie will do is send out kind of this summary staff note report and the conclusions, the recommendation, and see what we hear back from the three underrepresented in this mix.
Okay.
Which would mean, you know, we'd be back to you at the next Water Demand Committee meeting, making minor adjustments if we heard any, you know, loud comments to the contrary of what our recommendation is.
All right.
So on the next slide, what we've done is that we've imputed to Naval Postgraduate School, Presidio Monterey, and the school districts needs based on some information. For example, Presidio of Monterey has a credit or had a credit that expired representing a project they've really wanted to get done over time, which is between 5 and 6 acre feet of need. The school districts, we know that the primary thrust of the properties that they've been looking at, in this case, Monterey Unified School District, are outside the district service area, but there are some properties within the district service area. So we kind of just eyeballed that 4 acre feet.
The Cal-Am service area.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Cal-Am service area. And the Naval Postgraduate School really has not indicated in recent years of any needs and have really not done any projects or secured any credits. So we kind of put them at a minimum level just as a placeholder. And then we assigned Delray Oaks water based on approximately 25 multifamily units. And the county we assigned based on, well, what would that be, 60, I guess, multifamily units, recognizing that the general plan for the county for the Cal-Am service area here is rather limited. Rancho Cañada Estates is back on the docket. I think it's 105 units. Within that, there might be 20 affordable units, that type of thing. But the other areas of unincorporated county, which would include Pebble Beach and some of the Highway 68 corridor, there aren't that many opportunities, but nevertheless, we assign that 5 acre feet. So when you do that, with the requested amounts from the jurisdictions who did respond, this is what it looks like. And it's 113 acre feet. Next slide. So then we said, you know, 113 acre feet sounds a little unrealistic. What is realistic to ask for? And so we focused on what would be considered de minimis. De minimis is one of those Latin phrases that has many different meanings. It has meaning in law. It has meaning in taxation for fringe benefits. It has meaning in the municipal bond industry, where I came from, for paying of capital gains versus ordinary income tax on discounted bonds. And it's bandied about in many sectors. But what we did is we said, look, we can't over ask. There's not really any available water. So this would be something that the state would be doing as a courtesy to its counterpart, the Housing and Community Development Department at the state, in order to let the jurisdictions have some latitude with water. So what we did is we looked at production in water year 2009 when the CDO was instituted, our production in the last 5 years, The difference being 3,607. We said, okay, 2% of that is 72 acre feet. 2% is kind of a, I won't get into how or why, but 32 years ago when I was in business, 2% was a de minimis amount on something that we used to look at in the investment banking world. And so we rounded that to 75 and said, that's a more reasonable ask rather than the 113. Next slide, Arlene. So then if we take the same proportions that we looked at in table 2 that equaled 113 acre feet and dial it back to just 75, then this is what all of those allocations would look like. And basically it moved everybody who had 3 down to 2 and so forth. Next slide. Then we said, well, you know, this was done by initial response. Some of the responders have water of their own, like Pacific Grove, and some of the responders have none, like Delray Oaks, or very little, like Monterey. And you can see in the narrative that Stephanie wrote about the different initial requests, some of them have over asked for what they reasonably can anticipate for the next 3 to 4 year period. So we said, what other weighting mechanisms might we have? And this first one looks at population. So leaving Naval Postgraduate School, Presidio, and school districts in place, if we redistributed the remainder based on population, this is what the allocations would look like, adding up to a total of 75 acre feet. So it kind of dialed back Pacific Grove a little bit, increased Seaside by quite a bit, and so forth. Next slide. Then we said, you know, population may not be the best measure of need. This is supposedly housing related. So let's look at, there's a misspelling in this title. It should say RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation Goal. And so we did the same thing, leaving the 3 underrepresented with their 2, 4, and 2. And we then redistributed the remainder based on the RENA goal. And you can see that City of Monterey's regional housing needs goal is so high that it upped their allocation to 31 acre feet, and it radically reduced the allocation to the very smallest of jurisdictions, and also increased Seaside to a significant number. And then we said, well, okay, Monterey didn't ask for 31 acre feet. They asked for 16 to 23. Let's dial them back to a rough average of 20 and redistribute the rest. And so in the next slide, you can see we moved Monterey to 20. We kept Seaside the same. We increased the smallest entities, Carmel and Delray Oaks, and took 5 acre feet back to replenish the district reserve for the decision the board made to free water up for the Garden Road project. So we would repay that district reserve and then hold that for future discretionary actions by the board if approached by a jurisdiction. So this is our recommendation, and this is what we told everybody about today. And there was no, as I said, no significant pushback. And so that's where we're at. The next slide tells you what our implementation timeline is. So this is the ask that we told the TAC we would tell them what we were thinking. We're updating you today on July 2nd. As I mentioned earlier, Stephanie will send a reminder to the jurisdictions in about 10 days. And right after the holiday, send a note to Naval Postgraduate School, Presidio, and the school districts, just to hear from them. And then we'll come back with really what the final ask is, as well as we're going to spend some time during August to kind of develop the local coalition, which will include some of the planners from the jurisdictions, as well as some of the non-governmental agencies such as Land Watch, United Way, Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, and others who have a significant interest in housing. We've already had some communication with the State Department of Housing and Community Development. We've agreed it needs to get to the highest level. So we'll be working on communication with them and getting their support before petitioning the State Water Board. Last Friday, I had a conversation with an attorney with the State Water Board. They are aware of this whole process. There's not a defined mechanism that they have to provide the relief we're looking for. As you may recall from our last committee meeting, I said that the specific language with respect to relief applied to the reductions in withdrawals, not to all aspects of the CDO. But I think we're going to take the tact that that was an oversight, and they should have intended that anything within the CDO that causes a health and safety hazard should be subject to the granting of relief from the deputy director. So that'll be done in late August, and then we've left 2 months aside for continued discussions to try to get there, and then see what happens before the end of the year. And that concludes my presentation. I'll take any questions or kick it back to Stephanie.
Okay, thank you, General Manager. Director Hoffman, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Director Hoffman, can you turn your volume up a little bit if you can? I know I'm loud.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
So, Dave, in the request from Pacific Grove, which was 31, and in the recommendation, it drops to 5. And just so I understand, you're saying that they were comfortable with that?
That's a very good question, because they were the one non-attendee. I think Stephanie addressed it a little bit in her description of their request as being slightly padded. I don't want to pick winners and losers, so to speak, but they also have their local entitlement. So they have access to quite a bit more water than some of the other entities do, and their request may have overstated their immediate term need.
The reason why I ask is you mentioned the term de minimis, and that's coming up with the 75. It just was a curiosity to me why 92 wouldn't be considered de minimis also, which was, if you add up everybody's request, that's what the total was, and to just reallocate the 92 as opposed to 75, which just how that decision was made not to use the 92.
Yeah, totally agree. And we kind of threw it, and this is just at staff level, we kind of threw it back and forth and back and forth. And yeah, I wish I could say there's greater method and meaning behind it, but the original request didn't reflect everything. So it became that 113 number. And we kind of felt like 113 was overreaching. And I said, well, let's take a look at this history, and 2% of the reduction doesn't seem like it's a big draw on the river. So let's see what that number would look like. And it just looked closer to 75 than to 92.
Well, and also consider that the 92 did not include water for Monterey County, Delray Oaks, the school districts, or the Army or Navy.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess my question is, and I recognize that the number in either case is somewhat arbitrary, but to the extent that 92 is what was requested, and if, I guess I'm trying to get my head around what good number would be. If you assume that Pacific Grove overestimated the 31 and is acceptable to them for 5, then the 92 is dropped below the 70, right?
Right.
So there's a potential that the actual de minimis number is, depending on where Pacific Grove comes back and either gives a thumbs up or is hell about it, it could be that 75 is even high.
Yeah, and I think you'll find that Pacific Grove is not going to be happy about that number. In the letter that we received from them, it's clear that they would like to be considered, that this request is based on their housing element. So it's a maximum for the housing element that runs through 2023, and that they have asked that the district not consider the fact that they have an entitlement of 37 plus acre feet of water that's still available. So that we were asked to ignore that fact. So anyway, unfortunately, they weren't at the meeting today, but I'm sure we'll be hearing from them.
And that's a good point. And that's why we're providing the second go round to see, kind of stress test these numbers and see what the jurisdictions say. We've also requested all of the TAC members to go back and actually discuss this with their policymakers too, because they don't really have complete authority to just say, "Oh, it looks good. Let's run with it." You used a very good word there, though. Arbitrary. Yeah, it's somewhat arbitrary. We're making an ask for something that we're not really entitled to have, so we wanted to keep it under control. But I can tell you, based on past experience, that there is certainly an emphasis on housing now that the jurisdictions have kind of passed over in recent years. So they are definitely more focused. But I would bet even if we got 75 acre feet, that they would not be able to be in a position to permit enough projects in 3 years to utilize 75 acre feet.
The other question I had is the amounts that were set aside for the postgraduate school and the
Louder, Gary, please.
Okay, sorry. The numbers that were set aside for the Naval Postgraduate School and Presidio, and as well as the county, because the statement's made in here that the county number is has been estimated.
Yeah.
I guess I know that based on your presentation that there's going to be an interest in doing a further reaching out to them. And I would hope also to the county, because again, the better information we have, the overall better product that we're going to have to present.
Yeah, absolutely. And the county was supposed to be, they committed to be on the meeting this morning, but ultimately did not attend. So we do need to hear back from them.
That's all I had, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Hoffman. Director Rowley.
Yeah, I have a few questions on the de minimis concept. Was the thinking that we're not allowed to have these allocations anyway? Was it trying to find what's the largest number we can make and have the smallest impact on the decision and have some likelihood of success? Is that where de minimis kind of makes sense?
That's where it came from.
Yep.
Okay. And my question about Westhoff, did he participate in the discussion this morning?
I did not. So purely an observer.
My third question, and I have a fourth question. My guess is that the COVID-19 has just stressed everybody out and has put such a damper on everything that's going on economically in the entire community. And that no matter what you ask them about the next 4 years about building some projects, I have a very kind of different kind of impression that things are going to be slower than everybody's planning on. So whatever numbers you have for 3 or 4 years going forward, it's going to be like 6 or 7 years probably, or at least 5 or 6. So that it's still an optimistic number, even if they give you the numbers. I just think they're very optimistic. Have they mentioned anything about COVID slowing anything down?
Well, we've been getting mixed signals on that. Stephanie Locke got an email or communication today from somebody who wanted to delay an inspection because with COVID, they're just having trouble getting their architect to get plans done in time and so forth. So, this is a residential property.
And yet we're extremely busy with water permits right now.
Yeah.
So, and we do know that the city of Monterey is about to go out. They're issuing requests for proposals for 4 fully affordable housing projects in the city, as in addition to the projects that are proposed on Garden Road.
So there is action out there. Okay, I was
Yeah.
not expecting much in the way of action.
Yeah, and a lot of people are doing accessory dwelling units right now also.
Sure. Okay,
George, just a comment. While business activity is problematic, money is very, very affordable at the moment. So people that have access to money, this is a good time to be borrowing.
thanks for that input. Thank you. My last question is, let's say we are successful in getting 75 acre feet. And the argument is based on chart or table 6. But suppose we get 75, what's the process for changing some of those numbers, whether PG comes forward or the county comes forward or something? Just because the county doesn't giving us information doesn't mean that nothing's going on. They're just have their own priorities.
Yeah, we did talk about that at the TAC meeting, and you raise a point that I think we need to resolve if we're successful, but maybe even resolve at our next water demand meeting, which is, okay, if we are successful, do we give it all out based on these allocations right away? Or do we give out, 60% of it or 75% of it and hold the rest back, saying, this is our perception of your allocation, but if you're not making substantive progress and someone else comes in and says, well, we really do have a need that we didn't foresee, let's adjust those allocations. And I think that's kind of where I'm leaning right now, is we say, we're going to commit to you that a portion of this final allocation, whatever it is, will be made available to you, because, developers have to have certainty in order to go to their lenders and so forth. So, but I don't want to just simply rely on 9 acre feet in the district's reserve as the only flexibility we have. And because water has been currency in this community, if we gave all of the 75 out based on that pattern, you may have a jurisdiction who isn't going to need it, but isn't going to give it up. And so I think we need to be sensitive to that.
Well, Dave, let me cut in there, because when we were talking about the district reserve earlier, we had people out there saying we shouldn't have a reserve. So how do we answer that? Because that's why I wonder whether we're going to replenish ourselves. Should we have a reserve or not have a reserve? And that's the question. I know we got to have a drought reserve. How come we can't have this reserve? I'm just throwing that to you.
Well, and in response to that, for example, the Presidio of Monterey, currently, if right now, if they were to want to move forward with, say, their large dorm project that they currently don't have water for, that would be an appropriate ask for use of the district reserve. So I think that having some body of water that is available for community needs is important, and we finally got a little bit in there. We've given out some for affordable housing with the Garden Road projects, but if we can reinstate that, then it's available if there's a project that is very compelling that comes forward.
Yeah,
Okay,
and ultimately keep in mind that at the same time this timeline is being pursued, the Coastal Commission has their hearing on the desal plant in August. So there may be some very good clarity, what's the project and when's it going to go forward and when is it going to come online. And chances are, let's say, for example, it is desal and it's approved to move forward. If all other remedies for people who don't want it are exhausted, well, then the timeline. And it could be that, here we are trying to get water in for a 4-year period, and you may only need a 30-month period. So there's going to be some play, but there's also going to be, knowledge. You'll know what the project is and when it's going to come online. So as you move through time and year 1 passes and now you're in year 2 and you're a city saying, well, shoot, I've got 10 more acre feet to go. It may be that by the time whatever project that's going to be built is built, you'll already know that the water supply project, the permanent water supply, is going to be online. So you don't actually need your allocation to commit to availability of water. So they're all going to kind of play together.
Director Rowley, you have any more questions? Sorry for cutting in.
I'm open for cutting in. Yes, a little more on the question of priorities and where they come from. The state's made the priority for affordable housing. They're obviously moving in that direction, but somewhat more slowly because of some budget issues. But that priority is expressed in their arena numbers also to the cities. And I just want to raise the question, or at least an interest that I would like to see the district think about, is that we have a district-wide view of things. And just because there's, I forget the count, there's about 9 or so, 10 allocations here. If any 2 or 3 fall behind in any way, it doesn't mean that the housing in Seaside is going to not serve Monterey or Pacific Grove or others.
Right.
So
right.
To the extent that we have a regional approach without kind of entering the realm of land use decisions, we're more dealing with it as a priority sense about what can happen quicker, what happened that still addresses the problem, and what can we do to be on the fast timeline, not just on a formula timeline. And so I just hope the 60% idea could be developed more, and with a logic that they see that they can be sold on.
Yeah, and I think you can take that same sentiment to the bigger water allocation process. So, here we're just talking about housing and a small set aside and 2 state mandates kind of compromising with each other. But when it comes to the permanent water supply solution, if we, the district, are going to, as currently planned, allocate that water, you don't want to allocate all of it. You want to allocate what you think is needed for the next decade, and then see who grows how fast and who's going to, where's the next area of growth going to come from and the next area of growth, so that you're able to kind of track the actual need rather than, what we had done in the past when the district reserve was given away was we divided it by 8. And we just gave everybody 1/8, the 6 cities, the county, and the airport district. Well, that's not paying any attention to where the growth's coming from and who's going to have the need next. And so I think that what you're saying is something we have to also keep in mind, not just for this process, but the permanent process.
Yeah, good. I don't have more questions.
Okay, a few from me. I like your chart. I like your timeline. Well, I'd like you to add one more thing into your timeline. When are we going to talk to the PAC, the mayors?
Right.
politics. I want you to add that in there, either September or October, before we go into that.
Yeah, I think it would be right before we head to trying to build a coalition with the housing and community development folks at the state. So,
okay, let's plan that and add that in there. And the next thing is for Mr. Laredo. Hey, this morning I didn't hear no discussion too much about the legal side of this. If we don't have success, if we have to start all over, you know what road I'm going down. So we need to prepare the cities to go down that road, the legal road. Your mic is off. I know you.
Right. Yeah, understood. At the moment, we're going, the concept is we go to the state with hat in hand saying, please, can we have some more?
Okay, but if they say no, I want you to be prepared to go with these cities to the next step. And I don't want us to hum and haw about it. I want you ready.
Yes, sir.
So that's why I'm trying to tell you. So Don Freeman used to do this a lot. The former city attorney of Seaside, get all the water attorneys together and y'all chat about it. So you need to start developing your plan if we have to go down the other road.
Yes, sir, we can do so.
I appreciate that.
so I think I just heard a movie reference to Oliver there.
Yes,
Is that where that comes from?
yes.
And it'll be answered by another movie reference from Caddyshack, where the guy who Ted Knight's character says, "You'll have nothing and like it."
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I'm getting prepared for. But I want Mr. Laredo prepared to start all over down his road. So that's on that. But then, Mr. Laredo.
Yes, sir.
And general manager, this is indemnity. We talking about forming a coalition, and Monterey is the first one to talk about indemnity. How do we protect the district?
Right.
And I want to do it early, and I want the board to know it.
Yeah, so we're working on the Garden Road allocation that the board did, which won't go through until we answer the question of indemnity. I know Dave Laredo and Stephanie Locke have already spoken on that. And I think, Stephanie, are we trying to develop a letter to go to the city of Monterey?
Well, we have an existing indemnification agreement that we've used in the past for water credit transfers. So Laredo and I have been working to upgrade it and update it so that it can be used for this project.
Right. And I guess the other question that will have to be answered on that one is it the city or the developer or both that we're seeking indemnification from?
My answer to that is that the board was very clear that it's the city that should be providing the indemnification. Okay. I would not feel comfortable just relying upon a developer's indemnification unless we have a much better understanding of how deep that pocket is, and yep. You know, that could just be a piece of paper.
Okay, so I'm good with that. So we'll work on that. As far as this bigger peninsula-wide effort goes, I don't see that indemnification or legal issues are going to matter because it'll be a negotiated agreement with the state, and so we would have a clear runway. I think right now the Garden Road piece, there's not necessarily a clear runway, and that was our concern.
Okay, and Dave, I just want you to make sure that all these coalitions that we built understand that.
Yeah.
You know, if we go to another step, where they're going to be and how we're going to do it. That's why I want all that stuff clarified early in the game, because once you walk into that state office, it's game on. So, you know, I just want y'all to be able to be prepared. And I don't want no humming and hawing after they say no, and I want action. That's what I want. So, good job.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure we've gone out to the public on this item.
All right, and I'd
Chair,
like to open it up to the public for 3 minutes. Arlene, would you open up for public, please?
Yes.
I think, and Director Hoffman had something to say.
Yeah, I just have an additional question for Dave, or it could be both Daves for that matter. So as it relates to how the potential cutback in water from the Carmel River as a result of the CDO, how does that dovetail or fit into this overall picture?
Yeah, it's it will be addressed, and that's exactly why Steve Westhoff has been participating in these calls. And I think our recognition that our past ability to just simply implement the district's permitting rules with people never having to go to Cal-Am to get meters set, that Cal-Am would just sit out on the sidelines, that world has changed. And so that's why we're taking this negotiated path. And so it would be something that would have to be consistent with both an extension of the cease and desist order, because that's inevitable at this point, and the ramp downs. So I know that in order for the State Water Board to make commitments, they will address that.
The state board has taken a look at entitlements as if those were present demand. And I believe that that's how we have looked at our allocations that have not yet been permitted, that gets folded into demand. So any cutback in terms of water use gets applied universally against the entirety and should not come off the top against allocations. The whole concept that we've been presenting to the state board is that we need to be able to plan and have some flexibility. And when you take a look at the allocation as a percentage of the whole, it's a very, very small amount. Should I say, use the word de minimis? So our view is that the allocation should not come off the top, that we are all in this together. And if there is a ramp down, then we should accommodate that, not to the detriment of these planned uses.
Thank you.
Arlene, any raised hands?
Yes, I see no raised hands.
All right.
If you are calling in, please press *9 on your phone if you would like to comment. I do see a raised hand. Please state your name and present your comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Luke Coletti. I'm just watching a version of Chinatown, but I'll let you get back to it. Thank you.
I see no other raised hands.
Okay, thank you, Arlene. Any more board questions?
I have a couple more comments, please.
Go ahead there, Director Ralph.
First of all, before I forget, I want to thank Stephanie for this report. I think you've been pretty assertive with the cities, and the cities have ignored you for over and over again. And you keep going back and you keep going back, and your emails seem to be very pleasant and not demanding. And please, this is important, so please give us some information. I just thought you've done everything you could to get the cities around. And, they have their own priorities too. I get all that. But if they want an allocation, they ought to cooperate a little more in some cases. And I just appreciate all your effort. Dave, in the second paragraph on second page of your memo, you make reference to the Coastal Commission taking up the coastal development permit on August 12th to 14th. I think they've set a special date of August the 20th to take all day on this issue.
Yeah, they set that date after I wrote that draft.
Oh, okay, I just didn't know. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, we're close.
And you'll also notice that table 6, the column doesn't actually add up to 75.
Really?
It adds up to 70. And there was some text after the table that got edited out that mentioned where the other 5 went to reimburse the district. So even though it's up in the recommendation, it's not with the table. So the presentation you saw on your screen added a line for the district reserve that you don't see in the staff notes. So there were a couple of hiccups related to editing between draft and
Well, and thanks for sharing. Thanks.
I think I heard you correct that this morning.
Yeah, I did.
So you said that pretty well this morning. So, okay. Anything else on that item? We'll close it. Any suggested items will be placed on future agenda. Director Hoffman, you have anything you want to place on a future agenda?
No, other than to follow up on, for example, the efforts we're making, get a report on efforts we're making to find a site for the water or the evapotranspiration site that we
Yeah,
lost.
the Sima station. That is a great question too, because we don't always get good response out of regional parks, but we took a tour over there, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. They're still irrigating right near the front entryway of old Rancho Cañada, now Palo Corona. And there's got to be previously they said they weren't going to keep the catering business, and therefore there was going to be no need for irrigation. You didn't have to have that grassy area, but they've got some picnic tables out there now and everything, and it is kind of a nice parkland setting. So that may be it right there. It's just getting somebody to commit, I think, is going to be the issue.
Director Rowley, you have anything for a future agenda?
Not at this time. If I do, I'll run it to the chair.
All right. You call General Manager. General Manager, you have anything else?
No, I'm all set.
Okay, General Counsel, do you have anything?
Thank you. No, have a wonderful 4th.
All right, y'all have a safe 4th. Be safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Progress.
Thanks, everybody.